Okay, now let's get down to the actual business of making the calyx. So if you didn't watch the discussion video on beads and such, the optional video, the last one, then I'm just gonna reiterate really quickly that I make most of my leaves and my calyces and things on 26 gauge green paddle wire. I like this a lot because it's very stiff and it's very thin. And we're gonna have the leaves, you know, they stand alone. So they need to be sturdy, right? But I also don't want to add too much bulk to my stem wire. You know, the petals, they have each other to kind of hold each other up, and the calyx for that matter. But so for the calyx and for the leaves, I like to use this 26 gauge paddle wire. So it looks something, you know, like this, and you can get it at any craft store. The Joann's brand is pretty good, though they always kind of change the maker, so it's variable. It is very variable for that matter, but I have pretty good luck in general. Michael's is okay too, and Amazon every so often, but definitely the Joann stuff seems to be the most consistent for me, at least where I'm getting it. So we're gonna make this thing here, and we're gonna use kind of our knowledge of basic frames. Now, basic frames are, you know, pretty much the first or the second kind of thing you learn after probably continuous loops, for that matter. So this is obviously not a typical basic frame because, first of all, it's a cone and it's got an open bottom, but we're following that idea. So if you don't kind of have a comfort level with basic frames, then I'm sure there's a really good video from Fen or Lauren on our site, on the group site, that's much slicker than mine. And so that definitely would be a good one to watch, because basic frames basically used for everything, hence the name, I guess. I don't know. I learned mine because I'm better at looking at diagrams. I think I said this in the last videos, but I learned mine from Arlene Baker, I think it was, in Beads in Bloom, because she has really awesome diagrams, so I don't even have to read her description because I'm not very good at reading instructions or patterns or listening to videos. I get very distracted. So diagrams are great for me. So if you're a diagram learner, I found Arlene Baker's diagrams incredibly helpful. And her book doesn't really have doesn't really have patterns in it, so it's all about the techniques. I mean, I think there's maybe I think I said this in the last video, like, I don't know, maybe 10, I don't know. There's not that many. I've never even done one of her patterns, I think, because it's not about the patterns for me. It was about her very clear instructions on everything from beginner to advanced techniques, and not even the instructions, but the diagrams were really cool. But anyhow, but videos, I'm sure we have some great ones on the group website already. So refer to those for the basic frame. And I'll show you kind of how I deal with them and how we're going to adapt it here to make this cone-shaped thing. Now, that being said, so if it might be the time to look at that basic frame if you're not comfortable with those before you move on to this, because this is going to be really weird looking if you're not familiar with basic frames yet. So you can see we need these long tails. These tails that are sticking out, these are what we're going to actually wire down and attach onto our stem wire. So we want these long tails. We want them to be pretty long. This is actually shorter than I'd want. So I'm going to pull out, I'm going to cut off where this knot is. And I normally like to have big knots because I actually use them. Not here because it's going to be so long, but I'm just used to making them. So I'm going to, make it pretty long, maybe like 6 inches above that knot. And then I'm going to start, and I make my loop. But here's the thing. I think I said in the last video that if you don't know, like, kind of what would fit, because again, this whole opening is going to depend on, first of all, how many stem wires you used, and what beads these are. Like, are they larger 11s? Are they consistent? So you can either measure that directly by taking a length of, a little bit of beads and measure that around the top of about 1/2 inch down, top of your stem wire, about 1/2 inch down. But it's a little bit awkward to do. And I'll be honest, and I said in the last one, I think I said start with 8 and an 8, but that's actually for, I think, triple stem wire. For a double stem wire, in general, so you can measure like this and then peel it back and see how many beads would go around it. But that can be a bit awkward. So a good place to start is actually 7 and 7. And when I say that, what I mean by that is this: you're gonna start with the inner circle, and you're gonna have 7 beads on one side and 7 beads on the other side. Okay, so let's start with that. And then our basic gist to get this shape. This is the shape that I found that really gives a lot of ability to push up, because each row has enough touch with the row before that it's really solid. Like, you're not gonna be able to collapse this. When I first started, and I was doing, for some reason, I don't know why, I just wanted to at the time, I did these, but I did them almost so flat that they were almost like a disc, because I thought it kind of looked cool for some reason. I don't know why it doesn't look like a calyx. But they don't help you at all structurally, pretty much. So this and it looks more like a calyx. I don't know why I did that. I don't think I did too many of them like that, but I do remember it. So I like this kind of this proportion of this cone, because you really get a good push and it's not going to collapse on itself. So basically, you can start with a 7 and a 7, and then for each row after that, add 2 beads. So this would be like 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, right? And that way, that's a kind of a good general rule of thumb if you have a basic size Japanese bead, like a Toho or a Matsuno, or even a Miyuki, something that, you know, they're fairly more regularly sized. If you have a check bead, you might need to start with that, but you might actually need to add a bead or 2 even. And you might not want to start with a 7 and a 7, because they can tend to be smaller 11s. But experiment. They don't take very long once you get going. So, try one that's 7 and 7, and if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. You do another one, and you save that one in a bin for another flower that's thinner. It's not going to go to waste. And you might need to add more than 2 beads in each successive layer to get, or row, to get it this sort of cone shape to it, and not be too tight, because you don't want it to be straight, right? You actually want a cone shape with it, a V shape. So speaking of which, let's get going with it. So let's do 7 and 7 and see if that fits, and then we'll start with that. So I'm going to pull out 7 beads, and now notice I see one that's damaged right here. I can see that it's cracked, so I want to get that off of there. I don't want to use it, so I can lightly, because you don't want to damage your wire, you can actually break wire this way, lightly tamp it with my pliers and just get that thing off of there. I don't want to unroll this whole thing for it, and I don't want a broken, like a chipped bead on there either. So just crack that thing off of there. Okay, so now let's go back to our regularly scheduled 7 bead program. Okay, so 7 beads. Now again, I'm going to pull about, so I have about 6 inches above the knot, and that's where I'm going to start my coiling from basic frame. Now I also want, now again, it's not really a basic frame, so I shouldn't say that, but my adapted basic frame. And I also want these to be long tail wires. So I'm going to pull them out so that the collapsed loop is about 5.5, 6 inches, so that's going to be twice as much actual wire. And that's going to be where I start my twist. And now these, of course, are annoying to twist because you got this, they're a little bit harder to twist because you got this long bit. The way my fingers work, again, I just jam my fingers in there, make the V, start with a kind of a sharp twist, and then kind of corkscrew it. And I kind of just focus on the bottom. The main thing is where they want it to be ropey. And we want that ropey twist where they're twisting with each other, not one around another, because that will slip. And I'm probably going to do about 1 inch and a quarter. An inch is probably fine, because I want to, probably 1 inch and a quarter. I want to be able to fold this down and get it back through the hole in the center, which you're going to see what I mean when we get there. So about 1 inch and a quarter. So I normally kind of do this when I'm doing long, awkward loops. It takes me a little longer to do my twists, but that's okay. Normally they're a lot faster, and so I can handle it, and you can too. So there we go. We got our loops. I'm going to straighten it out a little bit, so it's not my way. Turn this around. Okay. So normally what we do with our basic frames wires, we have like straight wires, straight wires, straight wires. But we want to have that opening, that little circle on top. So I'm going to bend this. So now I want to be real clear. We're not trying to make it a perfect circle right now. It's going to get all kinds of bent out of shape before we're done. But we have to at least have it be an opening. It might turn into a square opening for right now. Later on, we'll use a pencil and we'll shape it into a circle, which actually probably doesn't even matter once you get it onto the stem wire. So, but we want to just have like a little bend to it. So like a semicircle, right? And then we're going to bring up, because we decided to do 7 on one side and 7 on the other. So we're going to bring up 7 more beads, push these. And again, we're always kind of holding this. I'm always holding this like this and pulling against with my thumb and forefinger I'm pulling against. And sometimes I have to pull it back up because I might not have a good enough, grip on it. And these are with my weird hands, so you'll find your grip. If I can find mine, trust me, pretty much anyone can. Pretty much, I'm not guaranteeing. So again, now I'm going to put that little curvature on there. Get my beads up here. And I'm doing the same thing that I talked about in that continuous loop video, where I'm going to rely on, and I do even a slight little, like a little bit of a turn, just so that I can get these two beads to really collide with each other. Because that's what see how tight that is? I'm relying on the two of them, like pushing on each other to get them tight, to get this tight. I'm always pushing that way with my thumb and pulling that way with my other fingers to get this tightness on here. See, look, I can't even really collapse it right now. It's so tight. And now I'm going to do 180 degree twist, 180 degree twist, so that now my long wire, and I know one of them is called working wire because I saw that somewhere, but I never remember which. I assume it's the one with the beads on it, but I'll just call it the long wire. So the long wire, the one with the beads on it, the one that's attached to the spool, is now sticking out the other direction. Now, sometimes what I also do, and you can try this too, is I do a complete 360 and come back around so that I actually have a little bit more room down here for my first row to be underneath that one. You don't have to do that, but it does give you a little bit more breathing room. But it also makes it stick out more. So then you're going to use the wire. Remember, you bend the wire. You are the boss of the wire. I'm going to make a bumper sticker that says that, but no one will understand it. Now at this point, we're going to kind of stretch out these two tails into kind of a V. And don't get too worried about like what angle they are or whatever. We're going to choose the beads to put on them. It's going to force them to be a V. So it doesn't matter how perfect of a V they are right now. Now, if you do a 7 here and a 7 here, then your next row, the funny thing was I've never done it by counts. I've always just done it by eye. And this is the second time I'm making this video again, because I went off screen a bunch. And then the first one, I kind of watched it to see if I went off screen, which I did. But I also noticed that I kept telling you guys, like, look at this. Can you see that? Can you see that? And I was like, you know what? People might not see it the way I see it. So I'm just going to try to figure out what I do by count, which I've never done. And this is not a hard and fast rule, but it turned out a pretty good cone calyx. So I'm going to say, unless you see it like really, unless your beads are really irregularly sized, it's a pretty, and even that might be okay. It's a pretty good bet to just add 2 beads on to whatever you started with. So even if you do an 8 and an 8, then add 2 beads on it. So I did a 7 and a 7, so we're going to do 9 beads now. And I've never done this by count, but you know what? It's actually a lot easier because I'm always guessing at it or like looking and, saying that's too big. And so the last video I was like, look, can you tell that it's too big? And I was like, that's going to be annoying. They probably can't even tell because it's so teeny, first of all. So they're probably like, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, we're going to give this a try. This is not a hard and fast rule because I just made it up literally about 10 minutes ago, right before I started this video. But I did try a tester one with it, and it worked out well. So, but if you notice that there's too much gaps, then adapt. Or if it's too tight, then add a bead. Especially if you're doing check beads, you're going to have to be a little more adaptable. Okay, so I'm doing 9 and 9, but now I'm like, oh, this is so much easier to explain now. Because I just tell you, just do 9. You don't have to look at it and have a metaphysical moment with it, a philosophical discussion with it. You can just put 9 beads on it now. Okay, so you're keeping it down. Oh, let me show you how I do this. I started doing it without talking. So again, I'm always pushing up. I'm holding this one too. So I'm pushing up against this. And see how I'm holding it. I'm holding, kind of hard to show. This one that's here, the old wire. I don't know what to call it. The center wire. The one that would have been the center wire, but that doesn't work over here. So I'm holding that over here to pull it against, and I'm doing that thing again where I'm trying to get it tight against the other one. And again, see how tight this is on my thumb. And I'm doing a twist. And I'm doing a 180 degree twist. I kind of start it with my thumb under there and then bring it around. Now here's the trick though. The reason I also like the 26 gauge paddle wires, it's so thin. I like to get it like right up in there. I want to lock that row in, and I want to bring this over, keeping this straight, and kind of push it up so it's ready to get the new row. So the next row is right tight on top of there. So that was 9, so this will be 11. Again, I've never done it by count, so this is new to me. So this is going to be, well, I mean, I just made one and it came out really well when I thought of trying to count for you guys. So this is an 11 because we had 7, 9, and 11. Let me double check that. See, that looks a little shorter. No, that's it. Okay. And so again, I'm pulling the wire I'm going across. I'm going on top of it, and I'm pulling this one underneath here under my middle finger really hard and pushing really hard with my thumb and kind of pushing up into the next row because I want to kind of lock that row in there. So I come up underneath it and I actually bring this wire, the long wire, up, kind of push it up in between the last bead on the row I just put down, and I kind of bring it up to bring it over, just to lock it in there. That's just my weird little thing. You don't have to get that into it. But that's how I kind of make sure the rows are tight and that they lock in on each other. Okay, so I got 11 again. Now again, this is sticking out straight, but because I'm doing 11, it's going to make it into a V because that's the only way it'll stay tight. But you can kind of keep, pushing them down so that at least it's ready. So now again, I pull this around to that thing where I want the bead to hit that wire I'm crossing on top of. And you can do it the full twist like that if you want to. In fact, I normally do. I don't know why I acted like I don't. My full twist with my thumb in the V and bring it back around, straighten this down. Okay, and then next, what are we at here? So we did 7, 9, 11, and now 13. Make sure you really get a count there. See, I got a little bead that's straight in there. So I want to make sure I count that one. So we have 13, count by fives. Pretty much everyone does because we're used to doing that as a kid. 5, 10, 15, 20. It's easy for us to see fast. Okay, I'm going to straighten my wires as I go. Just kind of keep them on straight. Again, I'm not worried about the angle because it will have no choice but to be the angle I want because I'm doing these number of beads. So then I have 13. Again, I push it. Try to keep this straight. It's bending a little bit back because I'm pulling it. So it's kind of artificial. It's going to bend back because I am pulling it right there. And then I'm going to twist it around. Bring this, push it up a little bit. See how, but kind of hard. Do you see how that's turning white? Push it up and then push it over that wire that I'm twisting over. Again, I'm just trying to get a really tight wrap so that it twists into it. So, and again, we want to do 13. It's kind of hard from this angle for me to see, actually, because it blends into my hand. Okay, so then also if it's sticking out, you can push it down a little bit so it's right underneath. Again, you're the boss of the wire. Make it do what you want. So we're over here doing the same thing. Twist. And you can either twist like this. I guess I do a combo of both. Push it up. Get it in. There we go. Okay, so now we're at 4 on each side. So we did again 7, 9, 11, 13. So now we're going to do a 15. Make sure you know that you're doing, so we're doing 15. Okay, again, kind of straighten your wires as you go, that they get a little bit wonky with it. Sorry, I got a little off screen again, dang it. Okay, so now they might see this one slipped a little bit, and that's okay because it got slippery because it's only one thing here, so it's hard to lock it in on there, but that's why we get so worried about it. Not worried, but vigilant on it. But that's okay because on the next row, and you're going to do this one tight on here, and because of the ropiness of it, it locks in a lot better. So pushing it up and pushing it down over top of that wire and kind of pushing it up at the same time. So we're making that row. Oh, what did we do? We're doing 15. Okay, I got lost count. I've never done counting. I just do it by eyes. This is like all new for me too, the counting. But it actually does make it easier to explain, that's for sure. So 15. And now I've done 5 rows and we're doing 6 rows. So like 6 stories on it. And now this one is hard because when it's on this single one, it does get a little bit slipperier. Now see, here's one where I would almost say 15 might be too many. I'd almost check if I really did 15 because sometimes you can randomly get a bigger 15. Now that's 15. 9, 11, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, yeah. Okay, well, let's see. See, I might actually opt to throw a bead off of this and just go, maybe I only need 1 this time. But I'll stick with the program and let's see what we get. Again, if I were doing it by eye and like judging it, I might have taken a bead off. Maybe those are particularly wider beads just by random selection. But it actually looks okay. So why not just keep going? Okay, this is our last row around, so we're going to do 17. So, again, 5, 10, 15, 17. I don't know why I'm taking so long to count today. So straighten these wires because I use them, you know, to do it. So they're going to get a little bit wonky if you're going to use them. So, and again, I'm using keep your bottom, I should have said this before, but keep your bottom, like your index finger under here, kind of shaping it as you go to keep it as a nice little circle. You can always shape it at the end. It just helps you as you go. You're going to have to you can shape it at the end anyway. So again, we're pushing up against this one, and you can either do the twisting all at once, you know, and then you end up with it over here, if that's easier for you, or you can do like the partial twist and then have your, you know, your hands finish it out, meaning like that one I did the whole spin. The next one I'll try what I'm talking about. Whatever your hands are comfortable with. I am a slow counter right now. That is weird. I'm really pretty fast at it. I'm not trying to sound like I'm fancy. I just normally a little faster, let's say. Okay, so again, I'm pushing this as I'm doing it every time, no matter how many there are in a row. Notice how like white my fingers are from pushing this back. I always want like no gaps. I'm pushing this as I go. And then I'm also then coming up here and having it collide into this wire. And so it's actually stopping on that wire. And the way I'm pulling the way I'm pulling this under wire, I'm pulling this wire underneath. See how it's bowed? I'm holding it. So I'm pulling it up, which is making this bead collide into it and stick. Now at that point, again, once you get that collision, you can turn around. And what I'm saying is you can either do the whole turn with your thumb and the V, or just start the turn and then finish it up with your thumb and forefinger. So at this stage, we have our 6 rows, and it's actually looking, I think that's a good, just easy way to do it instead of worrying about it every row. And, you know, and now I'm going to actually do a twist on it. So I just do my first twist. I want the ropey twist because I want it, again, not to slip. So to lock it in, you always have to have that ropey twist. Otherwise, so the way a good way to make sure you're doing even pressure to get them to twist at the same time with each other is to stick a finger or a thumb up into that V and twist on top of that. And now I want this to be as long as, so you can see how it looks a little bit wonky right now in terms of like there's things sticking out, and that's okay. We're going to shape it in a second. With this counting thing, I don't shape as much as I go. So I want this to be longer than if I pull it through, I want it to stick through. So, 3/4 of an inch, an inch. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And I'm doing it pretty tight. Now I'm using my thumb in there, corkscrewing it up. Okay. Pressing my thumb in there, and that's good enough. So now we got that, and we can, at this stage, I would normally take like a pencil or a pen or something and shove it in the middle there and get that circle. It's not so much about getting the circle, it's just getting everything kind of in place. Everything in place. Okay, so we got that, and you can shape your circle. You're going to mash this thing so much putting it on that, spending time right now is kind of a waste of time, to be honest. But you still want it to be coney. You want it to be pretty, even and stuff. This one's actually not my prettiest one, but I think it'll be very functional, and that's good. You're probably like, it looks just like the other one, and you'd be right. It's just me being weird. Now, on this one, again, we're gonna chop off the knot, and then we're gonna chop off this other one at a different point. You don't want it to end up at the same exact spot, right? You've probably heard that before. You don't want this to be this, because then it's going to make like a big lump when you put it on your stem wire. So anywhere above or below it by a little bit is fine. I'm going to tie this off into one of my big knots because it's on one of those paddle wires that still has a bunch of beads on it. Now these, when you're cutting, I felt like I said this before, but when you're cutting, a loop like this, it's best, especially if you made it that sharp, not to cut it right in the center, because first of all, they'd be the same length, and second of all, there'd be like a little ridge where that thing turns. So you want to cut it kind of on a flat, sort of right to the side. That way when you flatten them out, they're both really flat and there's no little like ridge from where they turned in. Okay, so now we got our lovely calyx, our cone, ready to go. We just got to fix it up. To do that, we're going to shove these things down through the hole. Now I normally start to give them a little bend, to like give them a little bit so that they don't pull up as much. So I'll use my needle nose pliers and just bend a little bit right there, just to give them a little pre-bend. And then, you know, shove them through there. You know, once in a while they'll get caught in a row. You don't want that to happen. So we're going to shove them right through there. And then we got that little pre-bend, and you can push it down there. I used to also, but be careful, you don't want to break a bead, like kind of lightly tamp it down too, but you know, it doesn't really matter. You can, because that's going to be empty space anyway. But you want to pull them down. You can even just push it so it's kind of flat against the side. A little bit. You're going to pull it out to the side so it's out of the way of the other one. And then again, you know, just a little pre-bend, just so that when it goes down, it makes a little sharper bend. And again, we're putting it down through the hole, which is very hard to do when I'm aiming the hole up at the camera and my eyes are over here. Okay, now what you'll also notice with this is, hopefully you can see this, is that when I pull this one down, because that was like the ending row, that pulls this row up sometimes. Well, pretty much all the time. So just pull it back down, just push it back down, and then if you're going to tighten that one, just hold it down while you tighten it. You know, it's going to pull it back up, just push it back down, push it back down. You can then use, you know, you can flatten that one against there, and you're going to pull your wires out to the side. Just sort of, don't worry too much about it, because again, when you put it on there, we're going to mash it a bunch before we're done. So just make sure like this isn't sticking up too much, and you just push it back down. Again, boss of the wire. You heard me say that a bunch. Now we're ready to go, and we're going to fit it on, and we're going to hope like Cinderella's slipper that it just fits right on there. And if it doesn't, then you make another one, because trust me, you can do these fast if you're not talking about them at the same time like I am. Now, here's the one we did the other day. It got a little loose because I had to keep bending it up and down. But this is another reason to put the Calyx on, why we put the the florist tape past all the, like, you know, wires, all the construction wires, except for the one we wrapped around. And again, I bent it a bunch, so you normally wouldn't have this happen on yours, where it would start unraveling the initial wrap of the two stem wires. Okay, so again, we're hoping like Cinderella's slipper, this will fit on. And normally with 2 stem wires and Japanese beads, 7 and 7 on the bottom should fit. Now here's another little weird thing I do. You can ignore it or not. You'll notice that you do have that one kind of pointier side right here, right? You can see this right here. You got this kind of pointier little bit there. I will actually purposely put that into a place where there's like a divot kind of, or like a little spot where there's, you know, an indentation in my petals, to like really just get it up there and kind of lock it in, you know? So I can see like right here, there's a little space between these petals. That's a little more than the average space. So I'm going to take this little pointy tip part and put it right in there, because it kind of locks it in there more. Now, look at that. I'm putting it up. Let's see. It's going to be a very satisfying moment if it fits. Fits perfectly. Look at that. Tight seal. And fits right up on there. Very happy with that. Aren't we excited? Again, just like the slipper, just like the glass slipper, just went right on in there. I guess that makes the flower Cinderella. Anyhow, so we're gonna, now when we do this, before we do our, you know, our wiring it down, which you can do with probably, I do 32 gauge. I'm using this 32 gauge black wire because again, I bought too much of it. I think I said that before. So we're gonna use it again. 30 gauge shows a little bit more under the stem wire, but if you feel, under the floral tape, but if you feel comfortable with that, then, you know, go ahead. Now this is going to get a little messy because I don't normally have to do this under a camera. So it's going to be a little harder for me to hold it. So now that I got my little point up in the divot here and locking it in, feel free to, you know, kind of hold your flower like this and just mush it in there. Mush it right up in there. And you're going to feel like the sides of the calyx are kind of squishing too. You know what? That's okay. You can reshape it later. You want to get the bottom, and it might even feel like it's kind of like really misshapen. Well, don't totally misshapen, but you know, you want it tight. You want it tight, and you can always kind of bend it back out again. Because again, wire. So we want it pretty tight, and then we're going to pull these 2 things down, and we're going to hold them underneath hold them underneath our thumb and forefinger, and then push up again. Get it just kind of just right in there. Now again, if it starts getting too smushy, squishy, like and weird looking, then you know you're good. It just needs to this is gonna help us. It's gonna really. You can even see with me holding it, like how it really you can see. You're gonna be able to feel the fortification it gives. Okay, so again, about 3 or 4 inches down a wire. Keep your at least one side, probably your forefinger underneath it, so it's up, and then stick it along the stem wire underneath your thumb so that you can push them both up at the same time, holding this still under your thumb now. I guess you could do that at the same time first. Whatever, I try to get it like positioned, I guess. And now at the base of the calyx, don't do it over the beads, just right under that lowest row, you're going to start wrapping. And I don't normally get them tangled, but I can't move the camera. So you're going to start wrapping under that wrap. And you're going to wrap that a bunch. And again, I'm going to make a tangle because I am trying to do it all in this little teeny space. Okay, so just wrap a bunch. I don't know, I'm doing it like 10 times, maybe more. Right up under that calyx. Get it right up under there. Use your finger to guide it and smush it in there. Okay. Now, the calyx got pretty smushed. And sometimes you might, after you do your first 10, if you want to, depending on what's happening with your those tail wires, you can kind of tamp those down a little bit to keep them flat. Keep them flat against your wire. Only if you, against your stem wire, only if you think you need to. And after you do your initial wraps. And then once you do just a bunch. And I know it's a bunch of wire, but we want it to be solid. Okay, so we're going to do it down there, and I'm going to see there's a little hole there. I can see that the wires are kind of coming off the stem wire, so I'm going to just tamp it down lightly. Be aware that if you tamp too hard, you could actually break the wrapping wire, because that can sometimes break pretty easily. So, relatively speaking. Okay, so we're going to keep going around. And I'm going to find it easier right now because of my situation to cut. Normally I don't want to, because that might waste wire, but I'm going to cut it off now because that'll make it easier for me to just do it faster underneath this camera. Because you don't want to watch me do that for 2 hours, do you? I mean, it wouldn't be 2 hours, but it's very hypnotic. I feel like I'm watching myself, like, you are getting sleepy as I'm doing this. Like one of those old movies with the like pocket watch and the guy waving it in front of your face. And I'm doing this, it's just like, okay, one more time. Okay, hope I'm not putting you guys to sleep with that. Now, that's good enough down there for now. I guess I can do it with this hand. This is really hard to try to do in this little space under this camera. So hopefully you're not having to deal with that. So you're doing it pretty fast. So about 3 inches down is good. Now, so there's our guy right now. Now I'm going to leave it like this. I want to keep going. The reason I went so far down is because I'm going to leave this alone for a while. So this is going to get loose. So I don't want it to get loose all the way up. I'm not putting any floral tape on it now because our next step with the floral tape would be with the leaves on, and I'm just going to do it one more time all the way down, leaves all in. So, but the cool thing about having the calyx, now if your calyx gets smushed along the way, you can just, put it back together. That's okay. Push it over, shape it back to shape. But the thing is, it's going to look okay either way, so don't worry about it being perfect. And the cool thing about having the calyx on now is we do have that extra support, so now we can really shape it. And even if you don't do a calyx, you're going to have extra support from the extra wrapping. And we can start doing those kind of pull down situations like you do see in like Japanese watercolor prints when they actually have the, the lower petals are actually coming down a bit. They're like this. So you get this kind of really much more like kind of 3D multi-dimensional space. Pull it down, give it that kind of shape. I love those with it, the old watercolor. So you get this sort of kind of cool shape to it. And you can do that now. You could have done it before, but now it'll really hold up with itself, especially after we get this floral tape too. That's going to help with it. So you can really get sort of a more, pull it out. You have many more options now for your shaping. I'm going to bend this so we can see it. support stem wires worked over. So you can see now, like I said, you can see the side. We can do that kind of pull out thing that you see a lot in those old silk watercolors. You know, they can pull out. You can have it go down now. You have a lot more kind of choices because you have a lot more support on it. I guess that's a good way to put it. There's a lot more support now. So you can do kind of fun things, pull them down. You don't have to. I mean, some of you doing different shaping. It's been so much fun to see all the different shapes and colors. But knowing now that this is an option, and we're going to have to get the leaves on. So again, this is still not our final shaping, but it's still fun to do, isn't it? It's so much fun to do these. I just love I know. Okay, we're pretty much done, but I just wanted to show you how much fun it can be now that with the Calyx on it, with, you know, just have it be random. I also like them to kind of go in and out with each other, you know, so I'll kind of just really fast without thinking. I'm going to turn some that way, you know, do little sideways twists on them. So you get this sort of kind of fun shape to them. And then again, you can pull them down that way. Now we have all kinds of options for our shaping. There you go. So next stop, holy cow, that was a long video on a Calyx. So that'll get you done with your Calyx, and give it a try. And next stop, leaves. So awesome. We're almost done. Leaves and final assembly, final floral taping. So have fun with it, and I will see you guys next time.